Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you guys like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So Governor Brian Kemp out of Georgia has decided to not run for Senate, and this was something that a lot of people may not have expected because over the weekend it seemed like you had Steve Daines, who was the NRSC chair, come out and say that Brian Kemp had a vested interest in the Senate, and now it seems as if he has decided not to run. And this does deliver a blow for Republican chances in the state of Georgia because Brian Kemp is the current governor there. He is somewhat of an electoral juggernaut in the state of Georgia. He won his last election by roughly 8+ percentage points in the state. It seemed like he would be, if anything, the favorite to take on Jon Ossoff in the Senate race in Georgia, but he has decided, nope, he's not going to run. And to be fair, I'm not a big fan of Brian Kemp altogether, and Republicans could find a way to win this Senate race. It does get a little bit tougher, and you could talk about the fact that it would be, in the long run, a net benefit if that were to happen, because Brian Kemp, he is somebody that just represents the Republican establishment. And once again, you have these like rhino types or these like rhino light types. I think the term rhino is a little bit overused, but he's definitely an establishment Republican. And even when you need these people to do something, to help you out, they still end up stabbing you in the back. You saw Chris Sununu up in New Hampshire. He probably would have arguably been the favorite in that Senate race. He's like, nope, I'm not going to run. A lot of people are saying he's going to run for president because you have these consultants. They'll go around and they'll say, oh, you could run for president and win. Nobody's beating J.D. Vance in a primary. If Vance doesn't even run, it's probably going to end up being somebody like Marco Rubio, who's going to be the early favorite. That's going to be very hard to take down. Like Brian Kemp, if he really goes for the presidency in 2028, which I think is a little bit debatable, maybe he does just want to be done with politics. Maybe he wants to take a break. Maybe he'll run for Senate in 2028. Maybe he thinks he has a better chance there. I could argue that you could make the case that he doesn't. But regardless, it's like, yeah, it's just pathetic that these people have these egos, these massive egos. Oh no, I'm too good to run for Senate, even though I could help out. It's like if you want your party to win and you're the candidate that could win and you'd cause Republicans not to have to focus on it, you're doing the country a disservice because we're talking about the Senate here. Republicans probably have an opportunity to at least pad their majority so they can hold it for a decade and a half or so, but still you have these weak people who are just bowing out. Kemp would be a party line vote at least. He'd be one of the weaker senators, but Georgia's one of the weaker red states in general, so it would make sense. I've always told people, focus on primarying out people in red states that they don't really represent well, because you have Bill Cassidy in Louisiana. You have John Cornyn in Texas. I could more than live with Brian Kemp or Chris Sununu in a swing state if I get rid of those even bigger rhinos in the red states, but still, no, apparently not, because you have this guy. And it's like the selfish loser class. That's what these people are. He probably actually thinks he has a chance to win the 2028 nomination. And you have a chance you may end up with an even weaker rhino. Because we talk about Kemp and him being kind of like a globalist. He goes and speaks at the WEF. He had that big feud with Donald Trump. Raffensperger was even worse in terms of like 2020. He let Stacey Abrams walk all over him, eat his lunch and dinner and then some when it came down to election legislation. And he was a big reason why you have that massive historical anomaly in the state of Georgia was because of him, not even just Kemp. But he might go for it. And you might have people, if it's him and MTG, it's like he's going to be forced to win at that point because MTG would be a walking disaster electorally, whether people like her or not. If you like MTG, you better hope that she doesn't run for Senate because A, she probably doesn't win a primary. B, if she does, she's going to get destroyed in the general, hurt her brand. She'll be used to hurt the MAGA brand as a whole. And on top of it, she'll lose her House seat. She won't even be in power. So hopefully she doesn't do that. And she was out there on the campaign trail, giving a speech, possibly teasing an announcement. And it's like, maybe that was to get Kemp in the race. Maybe that was some 3D chess. I wouldn't go 4D chess because it'd be more like 3D. But yeah, not quite. Didn't quite work. So we'll see what happens on that front. So it is what it is. But this guy cost Republicans a Senate seat already. He appointed a very weak candidate. He could have cleared the field for Doug Collins. He would have easily been able to get over the finish line. He was popular. Kelly Loeffler was not popular. She was an establishment clown. Nobody really seemed to like her. She'll never win a statewide office in Georgia ever. Let's be completely honest. And then he could have shot a layup against Jon Ossoff. He probably would have ended up winning. And what did he exactly do? He didn't run. So like I said, the GOP, can they win the seat? They can win the seat, but it's going to get a lot tougher now. Now, when it comes down to candidate recruitment in the state of Georgia, who exactly is going to go for it? Who would be the best option? Because it's true, Jon Ossoff is weak. He's basically been open to impeaching Donald Trump. That's not something that's going to play out too well. It'll fire up Trump's base in Georgia in this midterm year, for one. And for two, this is a guy who voted to shut down the government. He's, supported a lot of far left legislation that many people in deep blue states won't even support, yet he's running in a state Donald Trump won in 2024. Now, it has moved to the left, and that's true, but this is a year where if you just look at the way Georgia goes, when turnout's lower in Georgia, in most cases, Republicans do better. It's one of the few states where you have a higher propensity electorate that leans more Republican. You talk about the college-educated voters. They represent a higher piece of the pie in non-presidential years, and in Georgia, they still vote Republican, and more so Republican than those who do not have a degree in the state of Georgia. Black turnout would be lower. That's going to help Republicans out, even though, college-educated white voters have moved to the left and black voters have moved to the right. Still, the turnout dynamics with lower turnout in the state of Georgia do benefit Republicans. The anomaly would be the runoffs in 2020 and 2022, where there were various factors, but Republicans were just utterly demoralized and were running weak candidates against Democrat candidates who were a little bit less weak. So they're going to have to find a new candidate on the Republican side. There's several possible candidates that could run. You have Buddy Carter. You have Mike Collins. MTG would not win. I tell people, beware of MTG. Brad Raffensperger, I don't want him to run either. He's a total rhino. He's more of a rhino than Brian Kemp. So not a fan of him or MTG. One of these other candidates probably could end up being just fine. You have some statewide office holders like Tyler Harper, who is relatively solid, and he is MAGA, and he outran Brian Kemp actually in 2022. And then you have John King, the insurance commissioner. So we'll see who it exactly ends up being, but a generic, non-controversial candidate who is well-funded, in my opinion, will at least draw even with Jon Ossoff at this stage in the game. I know that some of the polling will show him ahead of some of these other people, but keep in mind, he's not at 50% and he's an incumbent. So he is very much beatable, but Brian Kemp would beat him in every single poll. Now it seems like there's going to be a little bit more work to do to defeat him. Doesn't mean that he can't win, but it's like in Georgia, you're probably going to see lower turnout in certain parts of the Atlanta metro relative to the state. And you do have this big, ancestrally Republican, white working class evangelical base that turns out far more often in midterm years than your white working class base in places like the Rust Belt, the new Trump base. So you easily have this ability to win the state of Georgia. You have a strong Republican apparatus in the state of Georgia. You can win this race. I'm not saying you can't, but is it going to be a little bit more difficult now that Brian Kemp is out of the way? Absolutely. It's going to be more difficult. And on top of it, even if they do win, you're still taking resources away from other states that you possibly could be, putting into North Carolina, Maine, New Hampshire, Michigan. I think they still get Maine. North Carolina's kind of up in the air, but I'd say Republicans probably can get it. But this is a race that went from being probably lean Republican with Brian Kemp to toss-up, where you're not going to start off as the favorite. If anything, you could say tilt D to begin with, which easily can change now that Kemp is out of the picture. So once again, even when you need the GOP establishment, even when you need some of these rhinos to actually be pragmatic and win a race that's very winnable with one of these candidates that's a strong candidate on paper, they still find a way to stab you in the back. So maybe this will work out in the end. You could do a lot better for sure in terms of getting a much better senator in the state of Georgia. It just depends, can you find one that's able to run, able to win the primary, and also going to be able to win the general? We'll find out soon enough. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.